بشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما ربي زدنا علما الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So my dear brothers and sisters, last time we were talking about the incidents, the duel that happened between the magicians and Musa Alyehisalam. And the Pharaoh was humiliated at this point. And there are a couple of things that happened after that and before the night of Exodus. And these major events were highlighted in Quran. Firstly, the anger of Pharaoh increased, and the oppression against the Israelites and the Banu Israelite increased. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us 9 signs to Musa alayhi salam, which were like 2 signs were pretty clear, which had already been mentioned. After that, 7 signs came in the form of punishments to the people of Pharaoh and Egyptians. And after that, they conspired to kill Musa alayhi salam, and the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala came at the night before Exodus, and then Musa alayhi salam left with his people, and then the famous event of Exodus happened. Today, we're going to look a little bit deeply into these events. And we'll start with Surah Al-Araf, ayah number 127 to 137, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that the elders of Pharaoh's people said that will you leave alone Moses and his people to spread fasad or mischief in the land, and for the sake of you and your gods? And Pharaoh replied, we will kill their male children and spare their female ones, for indeed we hold irresistible sway over them. And basically, what happened that Pharaoh appointed the best magicians from all the cities of Egypt to challenge Musa alayhi salam. And they publicly defeated. And Pharaoh, at this point, he has actually no face left, and Egyptian empire has now been weakened. And Pharaoh is now publicly humiliated. And at this point, obviously, Pharaoh was really upset. And this is the time that now he wanted to publicly execute. And now they're going to put Bani Israel to their position because they were slaves. And there is going to be a grand execution plan, because what the general said to to Pharaoh was that, are you still going to leave Musa and his people to cause corruption in the land? So the action plan was not to just get rid of Musa alayhi salam, but also the whole Banu Israel, to put them in place. And they think that because Pharaoh was saying that they think that they have really become powerful. So now it's the time to put them at their place, and we are going to kill their baby boys and leave their women alive. Inna fawqahum kahirun, the last word of this ayah. We are going to show them who are the bosses. We are going to show them who are the bosses, and we will definitely overpower them. So this was the reaction of Pharaoh, and he was planning to basically execute this plan against Bani Israel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Moses said to his people, seek help from Allah and be steadfast. The earth is Allah's, and he bestowed it on those of his servant he chooses. At the end of things belong to God-fearing people. And after that, the people replied to Musa alayhi salam, that we were oppressed before you were coming to us, and we are oppressed after you are here. Musa alayhi salam said that your Lord will soon destroy your enemies and make you the rulers in the land. Then he will see how you will act. So basically, Banu Israel at this point, they were disappointed. They were being impatient. They were like, we were suffering before you, and now you are the prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even now, when you are between us, again we are suffering. But Musa alayhi salam is telling them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will destroy the enemies. But most important thing is that what are you going to do when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make you the ruler of the land? And then he will see how you will act. Because at this time, you are the oppressed. So you cannot show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala your obedience in that manner. But when Allah ta'ala will empower you, he will see how you will act. And after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that we afflicted the people of Pharaoh with hard times and with poor harvest that they may heed. But whenever prosperity came their way, they said, this is our due, this is our share. And whenever the hardship befell them, they attributed it to the misfortune of Musa alayhi salam. And those who followed him, surely their misfortune has been decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but most of them do not know that. So basically, now they're ready for execution. Pharaoh has made his plan and they are ready for execution, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his own plan. He gave Musa alayhi salam 7 signs, 7 punishments to deliver to the Egyptians. And as I already mentioned, that altogether Musa alayhi salam had 9 signs. One was staff, one was the shining hand, but after that there were 7 of them. The other 2 were immediate, and these 7 came one after the other. I want to put a question in front of you, that as we have seen that the people of Pharaoh, the Pharaohs and his group, they were humiliating the people of Banu Israel, and they were their slaves, and they were using this what they call the control by fear method. So what do you think? What happened to a mankind that makes the whole nation slaves? We know the history that Banu Israel were not always the slaves. They became slaves after, when Pharaoh came in power, and we know the whole history. So what's the mind kind of a slave, and how people, a human being, become this enslaved nation? What happened to their minds and their heart? Can someone?
I think the primary slavery is from the mind and not the physical slavery actually.
Absolutely, but what happens to the mind that they become enslaved?
I think if we look at the time period that from Yusuf alayhi salam's time to the time of Pharaoh, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
So, Quran also says that the Pharaoh, they made him into the groups, and one of the group he made weak, Banu Israel. And we were like listening to the previous sessions. I was thinking like, this one group, Banu Israel, why did he select them to keep them weak? And if we see the belief of the pharaonic system was not monotheism, and of the Banu Israel was that they are of a belief system where the Pharaoh always had this kind of threat that these people are not going to accept me as their ilah. And uh, and so he worked into making them over years and years, over centuries, weakening them financially maybe, or weakening them through not making them part of the education system. So the generations that came one after another, they were not as skilled, and they were not of that high self-esteem, we can say. And slowly they were made into, and so they were not, there came a point they were not qualified enough to do the respectable jobs in the society, and they turned into only the option left to them was just doing the menial jobs. And so they were made into this. And because we also know from the history that there was the prediction that Yusuf Alyehisalam had said that it's going to come a prophet. And if we see, maybe the Pharaoh was very sharp in that way. When Musa Alyehisalam comes and asks the Pharaoh that, I want to, why have you made them your abd? Just free them. So he says that, like, he does not want the Banu Israel to go away. He wants to keep them enslaved, keep them under him. And maybe one of the reasons is that he sees them as a threat to his own nation, because that is what he says. He turns to his people and he says, look at Musa, listen what he's saying. He's going to snatch away our land and our homes from us. And if he lets them go and they establish themselves on another land as another power, and they do not take him as his ilah, then this whole nation that is going to come up will be a threat to him, and he can see all that. And so when Musa Islam goes to him, he comes back to this same fear that is there in the Pharaoh, that uh, you do not consider me your ilah, because that is what he knows already about these people he has weakened, that they are not obedient to me. Their belief system is such that they won't be uh, taking me as their god, whatever I do to them. So maybe that is one of the reasons we can. It's just my opinion, and we can see it that way as well.
Okay, so you put it really well, Zara. I was saying that this is actually, in a nutshell, this is actually psychological warfare, and we are just going to come back to this point later in the discussion. And after that, we would like your opinion on that as well. Right now, I'll continue from where I left about the 9 signs, basically, that these signs came to the Egyptians one after the other, and they basically hit them so hard that they couldn't think about killing anybody. Last time, I ended the session with this question that after the orders of Pharaoh to start the execution, what happened that for like 10 good years, some good accounts of history say that it was 10 good years, or they were like many years that passed, and Pharaoh couldn't kill uh, Musa Alyehisalam or his people. What happened actually was these calamities, these things started hitting them one after the other. And these were so severe that they couldn't think about killing anybody because they were in the situation of emergency. Imagine, for example, that the government of a nation, all police and all army have gathered to barricade or raid a certain neighborhood. And while they're getting ready, they're putting their vests on, they're getting their weapons or guns ready, and everything else. And at that point, they get to know that there's an earthquake in the country, or there's a big flood, or some domestic strategy or national disaster has happened. At this point, all the army, all the security forces, and the police apparatus, what will they do? Naturally, they will be used to deal with a disaster. Is that so? So they were about to go on a military campaign against the civilian population of the Israelites or Banu Israel. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had his own plan. And he started hitting them sign after the sign. So these signs were like, if I give you the examples of these signs, they were like so hard that, for example, the whole river that used to irrigate their fields, it turns entirely into blood. All the water, all their drinking water turned into blood. All the fishes died. They didn't have water to drink, and the whole thing starts stinking, and nobody can drink water. And then when they were relieved from this calamity, a little bit, they were just about to, replicate their old mission. They were hit with frogs. Literally, there were frogs everywhere. When they opened the pot in which they had their pasta or whatever they had to eat, there were frogs in. And they couldn't go to sleep in their beds because they had frogs in the bed too. So frogs were everywhere. And when that sign ended, locusts hit them. And these giant bugs, local are these giant bugs type thing, and they would take over. They would come and take over everything. So there was an infestation out of control, one after the other, and this kept on happening. Like I said, not over the period of months or weeks. This actually Quran says bis sinin. This actually went on for years, and this crisis situation went on and on for years. So when a nation deals with an emergency situation, it naturally, what happens, it naturally starts consuming a lot of its resources. And if a nation is dealing with it on the national level, some disaster situation is happening, but on the national level for years, what's going to happen? It's going to deplete its resources, yes or no? It's naturally going to deplete the resources of the uh, whole nation, and it's going to weaken them more and more. And one of the last punishment that is mentioned by Bible, not by Quran, it is mentioned in Bible that all of the firstborn children of Egyptian who were siding Pharaoh, all of their firstborn died, including the son of Pharaoh as well. And what was their plan to do actually? Kill all the boys And the last thing they were hit with was all their own first boys died. And they said that there was hailing or rain happening on the land, and only the people who were saved were the ones, those were from Banu Israel. So a punishment is hitting a certain area, the whole Egypt, but the people of Banu Israel were saved from that. But on the account of Bible, it says that the people of Banu Israel were the one who have marked their doors with the blood of sheep. So what they would do is, I would say again that this is the account of Bible. So in the Bible, it says that what they would do is they would sacrifice an animal, a sheep, and mark their doors with the blood of that sheep. And after that, whenever a calamity or one of these plague or sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would hit them, they would be saved. The people who have marked their doors with the blood, and they were saved from the punishment. And they were living in the same land, but they were not getting hit by these punishments. They had clean water, their houses didn't get hit by frogs, and they don't have locusts, etc. They were spared from all of it. Everybody was around was having trouble, but they weren't. So these were like custom designed punishment for the people of Pharaoh only. And Bani Israel were safe from them. I even read this Egyptian study, and I got this reference for you as well, that this shows that basically uh, Egyptians used to have the beliefs in these gods, and all of these plagues or calamities or punishment that hit them were related to each of the gods. So their gods weren't able to save them. For example, the god of Nile wasn't able to save them from Nile turning to blood, or this goddess with the head of frog was unable to save them from the frogs actually. So this is their own account. This is what they say. So, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is that every single time the punishment hit them, they would come to Musa alayhi salam and ask him to pray. Each time a plague struck them, they said, "O Musa, pray for us to your Lord on the strength of the prophethood he has bestowed upon you. Surely, if you remove this calamity from us, we will surely truly believe in you, and we will let the children of Israel go with you." And what happens? But when we remove this scourge from them until a term which they were bound to reach, they were at once broke their promise. So when this punishment was removed from them, they would break the promise. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that basically they were again and again going back, because they were saying that we will relieve the children of Israel, but they wouldn't. And this kept on repeating. The Pharaoh, actually, who called himself the God, was humbled so much by these signs. Like I said, that the government of, you have to understand the situation, that it is happening over the period of years. And the government is getting weak day by day, year by year. So now they are humbled. At this point, the Pharaoh who is calling himself God, he is humbled so much that he came to Musa salam, asked Musa salam, Ud'u lana rabbaka, pray for us to your master. And another point, Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that when he was mentioning the favors of Banu Israel, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that is najjaynakum min ali fir'auna yasumunakum su'al azabi. The word najjayna actually means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rescued Banu Israel little by little, or he rescued people over and over again. One feeling that his sources, basically they were busy disaster management. So while they are busy in the disaster management, what happens to the border security or the control over Banu Israel? Naturally, when they are like hit by these punishments so hard, when there's frog in your home all the time, what happens is the ruler class lose the control over the slaves, and they started slipping out of Egypt little by little. So necessarily there doesn't have to be one exodus where all of the Israel came out. One idea can be that they started escaping little by little before. So these are slaves, right? So ruling class, they started noticing that there are a lot of absences. A lot of slaves are not there. And at this point, when they're seeing that they are being hit by calamities again and again, and now the slaves are getting out of control. So what they decide is that at this point they decide that okay, now I want. So Pharaoh decided that now I want to kill Musa myself. All up till now he wanted to torture Musa alayhi salam by executing Bani Israel, but he wasn't ready to kill Musa alayhi salam. But now that the relief came, as clearly mentioned in Quran, that it was clear in them that who was the God. Because all these years, when Musa alayhi salam would pray, these signs would go away. So they were sure at this point that who's the God. But still, as they got a little relieved by these punishments, they went back a little on their feet. Pharaoh decided to crush these people. He decided to crush or kill Bani Israel. And one thing that I didn't mention previously is that on another account in some Egyptian scripture, this is mentioned that these people of Pharaoh at the time of these calamities, because as we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I saved from you, that Jainakum, I saved you. So these calamities were happening on the Egyptians, and Banu Israel were saved. So what happened that was that when they needed food, they were rich people. So when they need food or when they need clean water or something, they would trade some of their gold or silver. They would give their wealth to Bani Israel to buy some food to survive at this time. And this can be, this interpretation can be backed by the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take you as you can see the last ayah subhanahu wa ta'ala that those who had been persecuted inherit the eastern and western lands. So inheritance is something that comes when someone gives up on something. So these Egyptians started giving up their property, their wealth, their gold to Bani Israel. So Bani Israel, who were slipping out of Egypt, they weren't leaving empty-handed. They were leaving loaded actually. And the proof of this can be that when they basically crossed the river Nile on the other side, they made this golden calf, right? So, and they put a lot of gold in. And where did the gold come from? So if they were running desperately on the single night of Exodus, they would have gold. So Allah Ta'ala, this with a lot of gold that they took from the people of Pharaoh. And this was the last batch. This was the last batch of people that was left with Musa alayhi salam at Exodus. And that's another reason that explains why Egyptians want to kill Banu Israel. They were leaving with their money, their wealth. So now they're like, okay, want to kill them. And now listen to the account in Surah Al-Baqarah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that what is najaynakum min ali fir'auna yasumunakum su'al azabi. Basically, I am referring to this ayah again because I want you to understand the condition of Banu Israel in these 10 years. After Musa alayhi salam has announced that he's a prophet, and he hasn't, they haven't got relief. So in this time, specifically in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is actually summarizing the sufferings of Bani Israel. And this is basically an amazing thing in Quran, that Quran used, several places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would just summarize the whole story. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that I want you to understand the choice of word. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that yasumunakum su'al azabi. They, if you read the English simple translation, it says that they afflicted you with dreadful torment. But yasumunakum word is like you were used as a commodity. Basically, you were used as an economy. Like Sister Zara was just mentioning that these people were like economy. Slaves are basically the whole economy the working class is using. They are the means of economy. So they were after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they were after you like someone is after some commodity again and again. And how they were keeping the control? Yusabbihuna abna'ahum. And again, the word yusabbihuna, they would keep on slaughtering your sons at different intervals, When Musa alayhi salam was born, you remember there was this ruling that baby boys of all the Banu Israel would be killed. And again, we read in the ayahs of Surah Al-Araf that when Musa alayhi salam announced that he is a prophet and Pharaoh was humiliated, he sees he will lose his control. Again, he did what? He put this rule that he will kill the baby boys. So again and again, this was a recurrent thing. And on top of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning in continuation, and they would leave your women. They would kill your sons and they would leave your women. And if you would notice the choice of words here, first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying abna'akum. For killing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying they will kill your sons. And yastahyuna nisa'akum. What is nisa? Nisa is women. It's not baby girls. It's women. So they would leave your women. And this is again the beautiful thing in Quran, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using a single word to basically explain a very painful situation Banu Israel was going through. Because these baby girls, they were left to grow into women. And these women will work for Egyptians. And what are they for Egyptians? The slaves. And they can easily get their way into them. So they can do whatever they want to do with them because they're the slaves. They don't have any right. So this was a severe test. So this was a severe test that Banu Israel was going through in these times. And one thing that is very clear from Pharaoh's rule is his strategy over Egypt was the strategy of spreading fear in people to prevent them from even thinking of resistance. They were oppressed so much that they couldn't even get a chance to think about resistance. And this strategy is known in different ways depending upon the context. Like in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that istaz'afu. They make people feel weak and helpless. So what Pharaoh would do is Pharaoh would make people feel weak, helpless, and humiliated or subjugated. Because same is mentioned in Surah Al-Qasas, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that indeed Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and made its people into factions, oppressing a group among them. So a group of them was Yustas Ifu. They were made feel weak. And in political and social science, this concept is called psychological warfare, or we call it rule by terror, where rulers use the intimidation, brutality, or constant threat to control population. And this is, there cannot be, better time for us to be discussing this thing. And in modern time, we know that this is systematic oppression through fear, a regime of terror that actually destroys any hope, or it actually destroys the collective courage of the whole nation. And Quran frames Pharaoh's strategy as oppression. First, he would oppress people, he would humiliate them, keep them in constant fear. And what will make them, what happens after that? Bani Israel will be passive and dependent. So I will pose this question again to you, that when a ruler or system is deliberately, basically a system used to keep people silent and obedient, what thing happens in the heart of the people? Does fear make people submit forever? Or can it be can we be awakened with courage sometimes? Or can there be a turning point? And if there can be a turning point, what can be that?
I think people will be silent, may not be obedient, but for them to stand against the system won't be possible, because they have lived a life of slavery, which has incapacitated their skills of courage. And because the Banu Israel did not stand up against the Pharaoh, it was when Musa Alyehisalam came, a prophet came, and he had to take them out of the system, and yet they were enslaved, if we see what happens later on. So applying this question on them, I don't think so. Okay, we will remain silent, may not be obedient, because if we become obedient to the system, then we are no more a threat. But I don't think so anything awakens the courage unless we are out of this kind of in slavery.
One thing that I want to mention here, like you said, that we know later on they were also enslaved. One thing that we have to give credit to Banu Israel of that time is that they were like, their punishments were severe even before the Exodus and stuff. But one thing that they maintained was for the longest time, the belief in one God. They messed up with the concept of akhirah. They messed up with prophets. They did a lot of bad things. I'm not talking about them, but they maintained the concept of one God for like the longest time.
Yes, and that is what did not make them obedient.
But again, let's get back to the question. Yeah, of course. Let's get back to the question. Because it's not about how we answer the question. It's start thinking that what does fear do to us? What does fear do to the nations that they will keep submitting forever? And what can be the changing point?
A leader?
Yeah. In this context, it looks like a leader can also, but let's just break it down a little bit. Don't stop thinking about it. Keep thinking about what we can do. Is basically, we humans, we often measure our safety by the tangible things, what we can see. Like our safety is determined by how much power we have, how many numbers, wealth, or weapons we have. So that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that be prepared. Prepare against them with whatever you can for power, military power, and with the force for the war. Why? To deter Allah's enemy, to inflict, your robe, your strength in their hearts, in the enemies, in your Allah's enemies, in your enemies, and in other people as well who you don't know, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. So it is to terrify the enemies that you should have this strength. So the concept or the psychological frame of the warfare is actually controlled by terror. What it does is it true for all mankind and for all time. This control by terror. And when these material things, the strength, power, and numbers, when we fall short in these material things, our mind slips quickly into fear and hopelessness. And Pharaoh basically exploited this psychology, spreading fear in Bani Israel because they would feel too weak. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps reminding us that the true security comes from who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's an unseen source for it, Allah's will. When Bani Israel, we just read in Surah Al-Araf that when Bani Israel plead to Musa Alyehisalam that we were harmed before you and we are even tortured after you came. What Musa Alyehisalam said, we just read these ayah. Musa Alyehisalam said that he lifted their perspective. What he said that perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemy and grant you succession in land. I want you to place yourself in the situation. Banu Israel were constantly being humiliated, targeted, tortured by pharaohs. And when they are going to their prophet and saying that there's nothing has changed. Okay, there are 9 signs, they're being punished, but the same thing is happening. When they get back on their feet, they started humiliating us, they started torturing us. So if our situation for these good 10 years is not changing, we are still, mustazifin, we are still the weak people, we are still oppressed. What Musa alayhi salam is doing is Musa alayhi salam is shifting their psychological perspective. He's telling that your Lord will destroy your enemy and your Lord will give you succession in the land. Think about what you will do after you will be succeeded. Think about the time when you will be given this success and this ownership of land. What will you do after that? And if you notice, the shift here is basically psychological. Musa alayhi salam is asking them not to focus on Pharaoh's cruelty and power, but to focus on what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's promise. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always make the right kings own the land. Because if you keep looking at the power of the tyrant king, If you'll keep, like, it will keep, lowering your own spirit. It will keep paralyzing your mind. So that's a very strong lesson. That what tawakkal on Allah do is it actually re-anchors human hearts. It dissolves our fear by reminding us that no tyrant, no hardship, and no uncertainty actually stands outside Allah's power. So there's nothing outside Allah's power. And this, my brother and sister, is so powerful. It is such a powerful reminder for you and me at this point that nothing stands outside Allah's power. And this is why our relationship with Quran is really important. I say that in every session, and I cannot say it enough times, that the best gift that we can pass on in our generation is the knowledge of Quran. It's actually the reading of Quran by understanding. Because Quran repeatedly shows us what? That believers always had been facing impossible odds. Their situations had always been really tough. In all these stories of Quran, in all the Seerah stories, they're not fictional. They're not just historical facts that we have to listen. They're actually powerful reminders for you and me that relief always comes from the place that humans cannot imagine. But there is a prerequisite for that relief to come. And what's that prerequisite? That's human psychology. We need to stop going down to the fear, and we should stop looking at Allah's creation, stop going to them, and rise above fear. Basically, our fear will keep on, we'll keep on going down to our fear if we'll keep staring on Allah's creation. And how we can rise above our fear? It's only when we will trust Allah subhanahu. So this is really an important thing to take notes of, that when they were in really bad situation, Musa Alyehisalam reminded them to change their psychological perspective, build their trust on Allah subhanahu. And when they became a strong nation, after that, like if you see, Musa Alyehisalam is telling people to keep their trust, keep patience, trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he's told to prepare yourself with a military power. And if you see, there are two different things, and there are two different things at two different state of times, and they are both important moving forward. So this is the whole story so far. We have seen that the situation analysis of in these 10 years, the Banu Israel Egyptians were being hit one after the other sign. The next sign would be stronger than the previous one. And during each calamity, Pharaoh would promise to set Banu Israel free, and he would break the deal once it's over. Banu Israel start becoming impatient, and they start asking Musa Alyehisalam when the help of Allah will come, and Musa Alyehisalam asked them to be patient constantly. And after that, Musa Alyehisalam has been asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to leave in the middle of night. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that leave in the middle of night and you will be followed. So Musa Alyehisalam told the same to his people. Imagine when we are going somewhere, what we do is we have such certain questions like where are we going? How much time do we have? And how long we're going to stay there? And, we have stuff to pack and everything. And at this time, Musa Alyehisalam is telling people that, you have only a few hours to pack and we are leaving forever. And they had no other option left. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned it very powerfully in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we revealed to Moses, set forth with my servants by night and you will be pursued, you'll be followed. Because now Pharaoh has made the final plan that he's going to crush Musa alayhi salam and all his followers. And at this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this to Musa alayhi salam, that you should leave at night with your followers. And then Pharaoh set the groups into the cities to mobilize troops. And what Pharaoh said is very important, because he's still, after all these signs, he is still the same arrogant Pharaoh. He said that these Banu Israel, they're only a small band of people who have certainly provoked our wrath. They have certainly provoked our anger. And what they say, Inna la jami'un hazirun. But we are numerous in numbers, even on guard. So he says that these are small group of people. How can these small group of people, how can they do something against us? So thus we drive them out of their gardens and springs and their treasures and excellent dwellings. Because of this pride that they had in themselves, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala drive them out of their garden. And what happened next is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this happened with them. We enable the Bani Israel to inherit those bounties. So basically, when they leave, they had no option. They left. So they started moving, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell them to leave at night, so they must have covered a lot of distance while the Pharaoh's army was started following them. And there was a point that they came across the water, and they had these elders and children with them and women with them, and it's impossible to jump in a good body of water. And what they see behind is dust rising behind them. Pharaoh, with the strongest army of the time, was approaching them, and Banu Israel is standing at the water. And water is still water. There is civilian population with them, and an army is chasing them. And slowly, as the moment would pass, dust start rising beyond them, and they are getting closer and closer. And they can see that nothing is happening yet. And Banu Israel tell Musa alayhi salam, you got us killed. Just because of you, we're going to get killed now. And if you see this situation, this is a really, really powerful situation that was happening at this time. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described the epic word that the whole population is standing there and they are blaming Musa alayhi salam that you got us into this and now we are going to get killed. Pharaoh was killing, less of our people. Now all of us will get killed together because of you. So they're standing there and they're thinking that, death is coming behind us. And at this point, Musa alayhi salam's word were so epic, so powerful, and so beautiful. He said, Kalla, inna, maya, rabbi, sayahdain. It is so powerful. This is like the really, really powerful and beautiful moment in the Quran. This alone is such a powerful statement that Musa alayhi salam said that, how can this be possible? My Lord is with me and he will guide me. And this is the epitome of trust or tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Musa alayhi salam displayed at that time. And sometimes, we need to keep reminding us for this one moment that when the calamity is in front of you, when you see that, death is right over there, even at that time, this trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that was huge. I cannot, sometimes I think that I don't have words to explain this. This is a feeling that we have to feel ourselves, that in that moment, how Musa alayhi salam said these words. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shared the whole journey of Musa alayhi salam with us. It was the same Musa alayhi salam who, when saw the snake, when his staff turned the snake, he turned back, started running. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him back. Don't fear Musa. It was the same Musa alayhi salam who, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the mission to go to Pharaoh, remember we discussed the 5 fears. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving mission to Musa alayhi salam, and Musa alayhi salam is saying that they're going to kill me. I cannot go alone. Send my brother with me. Musa alayhi salam is saying they have a crime recorded against me. Pharaoh is going to humiliate me. He's sharing his fears with them, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time. And all of this, throughout this journey, at this point, now the tawakkul of Musa alayhi salam with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so strong that the strongest army of the world is right there. Imagine that dust which was rising over them and coming closer and closer. And he's saying that my Lord is with me. My Rabb is not gonna leave me like this. He will guide me. And these words are so epic. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the strength to remember these words in time of our difficulties. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us understand these words of Quran. And if anyone has to add anything at this point, you're most welcome to jump in before we conclude the session.
Yes, I want to add one thing. I
Yes,
think we have missed one thing. Not missed. I think that was not a part of this session. But I want to add one thing, that when Allah mentions about in Surah Araf, when Allah mentioned about uh, the 9 signs that was given to Musa alayhi salam, and when the smaller torment, smaller azab was given to on the people of Pharaoh. So Allah mentions, وَلَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ بِالسِّنِينَ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَذَكَّرُونَ. And then Allah mentions, فَإِذَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْحَسَنَةُ, that when something good, they receive something good, قَالُوا لَنَا هَذِهِ, they say that it is from us, it is for us. وَإِن تُصِبْهُمْ سَيِّئَةٌ, and when something bad happens to them, يَطَّيَّرُوا بِمُوسَى وَمَن مَعَهُ, so they say that it's because of Musa and the people with him. So right now Allah Azza wa Jal mentions this characteristic of Musa, of Pharaoh and the people all around Pharaoh, that whenever they received anything good, any good tidings, they said, oh, that's because of us, we are doing very good things. And when something bad happens, they said, oh, that's because of Musa, that's because of Musa and the people around him. So that's the psychology Allah is mentioning, that the people who are low in their mindset, who are low in self-esteem, who has smaller mindset, they do the things like this, they do the blame game. Whenever they do something bad, whenever they are afflicted with something bad, they just blame others for that thing. And right now the same thing happens in our society also, that whenever something bad happens, oh, bad omen, that's a bad omen, that's because of that person, he's having a bad sight on me. So this thing happens all around us, and Allah is teaching us. And then the ayah continues like this, and Allah says, Allah innama ta'iruhum indallah, that the whole the ta'ir that they do, the omens and the everything, that's indallah, that's from Allah, all alone Allah. Walakin aktharuhum la ya'lamun, and the most of the people from them, they don't know this. So that's the whole exact point I wanted to say, that Allah Azza wa Jalla is mentioning the ta'iruhum indallah, the whole omen thing, and the bad omen and the good omen, the blame game, that's not because of anyone, it's because from Allah. Everything, like our belief of qadr, qadr, bad qadr and good qadr, that's from Allah. So that was the one thing I wanted to add over here right now.
That was a very, very important point that you had about the is really something that we should take note of, and just for reminding us of that. I think that is it. Then Jazakallah khair. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Quran al-Hakim wa nafa'ni wa iyyakum bi ayati wa zikril hakim. Assalamu alaikum.